All right, looking at Titus chapter 1, verse 12. We'll read through it in the Greek. Apen tis ex auton idois auton prophetes. Cretes aie psustei kaka theria gasteres argai. All right, reading through it in the NASB. I'll also underline as we go. So said, one of themselves, they're a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and lazy gluttons. So here we have a verb to start with. So we're wondering, okay, what could be the subject of this verb? If I look at the verb in my software, I realize, okay, apen, this is the aorist active indicative third person singular. So I'm looking for something nominative, singular, that could be functioning as my subject here. And what do I see next but a nominative singular pronoun? So nominative singular, likely this is my subject. So a certain one, and then we have a preposition modifying this one, a prepositional phrase, out of themselves, a certain one out of themselves, said. But then we have even another modification, and this is actually functioning in apposition. Idois, one of theirs, idois, their prophets. So a prophet of their own, or one of their own prophets. So this would be functioning in apposition to the previous section there. Tis ex auton, a certain one from them, their own prophet, said. And then what follows is the actual direct discourse quotation. So, quote, Cretes, or Cretans, one from Crete. And then this has the implied verb are. Within this, there's an implied verb, a to be verb. So Cretans are always, is the idea here with the adverb I. They are always what? Well, we have the first nominative, predicate nominative. So Cretans are, I'm going to do square brackets there in English to just not confuse myself, that doesn't actually exist there. And then are, this is are always, so I'm going to put that down as modifying the verb, are always what? Predicate nominative. And what follows here are three different descriptors. Thing one, thing two, thing three. Thing one, they are liars. Thing two, they are beasts. What kind of beasts? Evil beasts. Interestingly, I read in one commentary that one person found something in ancient writings that apparently Crete was known for its unusual lack of wild animals and wild beasts, but this is a quote from one of their prophets saying, actually, there is wild beasts. All of the Cretans are, as it were, wild beasts, evil beasts. So they're evil beasts, and they are gasteres. Thirdly, they are gluttons. And what kind of gluttons? They are argai gluttons. If you look at argai in your lexicon, you'll realize lazy, refusing to work as a lifestyle. So the idea of idle would be kind of a temporary one-off. Lazy would be it's just characterizing your life. So that is the description of the Cretans from what Paul calls a prophet of their own. The prophet here being likely a passed down from the writings of Epimenides, but not prophet in the normal biblical sense of the term, but prophet in the sense of one who speaks for the Cretan people. And of course, this is an interesting paradox, the liar's paradox, as it's called. When someone is always, as I says here, always a liar, but it's one of their own saying it. So the statement is essentially, I am lying. Well, am I always lying? If I'm lying, am I telling the truth? In which case, I'm not actually lying, because it's the truth that I am lying. So it's a cyclical paradox that is ironic and unable to be broken unless you get outside of it and have someone else's evaluation on the situation, which is exactly what we'll see in verse 13, where Paul says, this testimony is true. So he somewhat humorously breaks into this paradox and says, true. The evaluation that Epimenides gives on Crete as a whole is not positive, especially when he's talking about those that are corrupting the truth and actually bringing people back into a works-based attempt when Christ's work on the cross has actually paid for all of their sins. So they need to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and trust in him for salvation, rather than returning to external rituals as a means of pleasing the Lord, since the Mosaic covenant has been inactivated by the accomplishment of the cross and the new covenant. So that is a pretty stern rebuke that Paul gives, but he's going to continue to unpack the significance of it and the optimism of it. The hope in the midst of this rebuke is not for the sake of proving oneself, but we're going to see in verse 13 that the hope is that they may be sound in the faith. So there's a hope even in bringing this serious charge against them. There's a hope of ultimately salvation and edification coming out of this. So that is Titus chapter 1, verse 12.